Colts 2024 schedule has been released, and we've got some takes. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen since the schedule has been released. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. What's up, everybody? This is Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks of HorseshoeHuddle.com. And we are fresh off the NFL releasing its season-long schedule. We now know in what order and when the Colts will be facing their 17 opponents. So today we're kind of breaking down key games. We've got the key stretches of the season for you as well, and then what primetime games the Colts have. And then rather than just, go through each and every week for you, we've got a nice little ticker here that Zach has prepared you at the bottom of the screen if you're watching on YouTube, telling you what all is going on in order. On audio, we'll go ahead and include the schedule in the show notes for you so you're not left out. So, Zach, let's talk about some key games first. And it doesn't really get any hotter than week 1 at home against Houston. You get beat to lose your playoff spot last year in week 18 at home against Houston. You've got, Zaire Franklin's comments getting amplified probably a little too much towards CJ Stroud. So this feels like a really good game to start the season.
Yeah, really fun game. Two quarterbacks who were rookies this past year. Obviously, Anthony Richardson is a little more green than CJ Stroud is. Stroud coming off of, 19 games played last year, and Richardson coming off of like 4, up to maybe 4 if you want to count 4 there. But no, I think it'll be a great start for this Colts team, and it'll really set the tone for, what this Colts team and what this Colts season is going to be. Obviously, the Texans are their biggest rival right now in the division. Now, the Titans and the Jaguars are still good teams, and they'll be tough opponents as well. But the Texans, you have that bitter taste in your mouth from that Week 18 game where the Colts let it slip away at the very end. But, when you're really looking back on that game with, a clean view on things and a fresh look at it, like away from it all, the Colts were in that game with one of the best young quarterbacks in football against them with their backup quarterback starting. And they got to that game with their backup quarterback starting. So getting into week 1, hopefully healthy, we never know with this team if they'll actually be healthy going into week 1, but hopefully healthy going in there. A lot of their veterans back and their quarterback back, who scored 14 points on this same defense early last season in 4 drives, 3.5 drives, whatever it was. So yeah, I think it'll be an exciting game to start off the year. And hopefully Richardson can continue what he was doing early in that Texans game back in week 2 from last season.
Yeah, that'll be a huge one because we did just get robbed of so much Anthony Richardson versus CJ Stroud action last year. And all fingers crossed from both sides, both teams, that we get that again this time. Fast forward 1 week on this one, week 2 at Green Bay. Luckily, it's not going to be a snowy Lambeau game for the Colts unless freak nature event happens. But I like this one too. It's got very little. It's not going to be a problem if they lose this one because it's an intra-conference game. NFC doesn't really matter, but it's kind of two similar teams in each conference on the rise. Expected to compete for playoff spots. Jordan Love is a great young quarterback. I think this will be an exciting one as well, kind of the same theme as week 1.
Yeah, it's very different situations, Jordan Love and Anthony Richardson, but I used a lot of what Jordan Love looked like late last season to kind of rationalize in my mind what Richardson could have been late last season if he actually played. Not that, again, they're different size player, like different caliber of players, different ages and stuff like that. Love's obviously spent more time in NFL systems, but you saw with Jordan Love last year as the games went along and as he got more starts under his belt, those flashes turned into consistency and he became a really good quarterback late last season. I think Richardson was starting to turn that corner as well before his injury. And I think what we saw from Love late last season is kind of what we could have seen from Anthony Richardson if he continued his entire rookie campaign. So seeing these two young quarterbacks go at it in this early season game, and luckily for the Colts, they get Green Bay after Green Bay is coming back from a trip to Brazil. in week 1. So maybe they'll be a little bit jet lagged and Indy can get them in a favorable spot. But love seeing 2 young, upcoming, flashy quarterbacks in Richardson and Love. And that should be a blast of a game. I think it should be a high scoring affair between these 2 teams.
Yeah, pretty hopefully reminiscent of a game back in like 05 Colts Packers at home, Peyton Manning versus Brett Favre. That was a really high scoring one. Next one, we got to get this on the road at Everbank against Jacksonville one out of the way. So week 5 at Jacksonville, and I'll include week 18 at home against Jacksonville as well, because again, could be a win and you're into the playoff type of game. Jacksonville, again, they won the AFC South just 2 years ago before Houston did. They just randomly happened to have kind of a hiccup of a year, but still a good team nonetheless. And those 2 games against Jacksonville are in pretty crucial spots.
Yeah, obviously we could just include every single divisional game in this first stretch here about the most important games. Like if you're a Colts team, you've got to go at least 3-3, hopefully 4-2 or 5-1, or in the dream world 6-0 against your division next year. But you got to take care of some of these games and at least split some series against some tough teams. And since my time covering the Colts and my time following this Colts team, you guys know I joined this Colts, this Colts like beat, right? I don't want to say beat writing, but media coverage in 2018. And I've been following this team since like 2012 or something like that. I don't think I've ever seen them win at Jacksonville. I really don't think I've ever seen it happen. So for me personally, I know how you guys all feel, but for me personally, I don't even know if this is possible. I don't know if this is something this Colts team can do. I think, I kind of count it as one loss every single season just in my mind. So I'm really, really hoping that they can come out and finally break that Jacksonville curse. Like I don't really like, for me personally, if we're talking about personal vendetta wise, that's the most important game of the year every single year for me, because I've just never seen it happen. Like it's like seeing like the Titans beat Andrew Luck. Like I've never seen it happen. So I just don't know if it's even possible here. So I really got to see them win in Jacksonville at least one time, at least one time with my time covering this team or following this team. Because if they don't, then I'm going to think I'm the curse here or something. And you guys know I'm not the curse, right? Like I can't be the curse.
Absolutely not. And Titans fans, if you're watching, go ahead and include your favorite Andrew Luck memory in here for us. We'd love to hear that. But no, my one of my last ones here, without diving into stuff we're going to talk about in other segments. Week 7, Miami at home. That could be a track meet game. I could see that one being that could be just almost like the Colts Browns game was. That was almost like 70, 80 points, whatever it was. Like this could be a super high scoring game. You're going to get Mostert, Tyreek Hill, Waddle from the Dolphins, and then all of these athletic freaks from the Colts, all on one of the fastest tracks in the NFL. That could be a big one.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that there's somebody in the Colts secondary that emerges with some kind of speed that can keep up with that Dolphins offense, because as we're looking at it right now, Jalen Jones is like a 4.6 or 4.5s or whatever. Juju Brents is like 4.5s. Kenny's a little bit faster. Dallas Flowers a little bit faster, but it doesn't bode super well for going against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane. Like this is a fast team coming to the Colts turf or whatever. It's going to be a pretty insane matchup there. And hopefully the Colts pass rush can get home against a somewhat weakened Miami offensive line. But yeah, that does have the potential for some crazy high scoring game.
Yeah. Last little kind of fun thing I want to throw in here real quick. There's potentially 4 rookies on the schedule on this one. So you got Caleb Williams week 3. We know that's going to be Caleb Williams as far as being the starter goes. Let's see who else. Minnesota Vikings. You got that one with McCarthy week 9. Patriots week 13. Drake May, and then there was one more. Broncos, Bo Nix, week 15. So you got 4 of those highly drafted quarterbacks. I think that one's pretty interesting as well, especially since we're so fresh off of draft season. We have to have something to do with all the knowledge of what we just watched now. So I'm going to pour that into watching those rookie quarterbacks when those games come up.
Yeah, the most fun part of that is Anthony Richardson will be the younger starter in all of those games.
He's
so
still
that'll be
rookie,
really
yeah.
that'll be really funny to see, especially against Bo Nix. I mean, Bo Nix is closer to my age than he is to Anthony Richardson's age. So that'll
Bo
be
Nix
funny.
is closer to my age than he is Anthony's age.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So on that note, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of the key stretches of the schedule coming up here in a second. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Guys, pour all your money into saving the Pacers, getting them out of this rut, and getting Tyrese Halliburton some magic back. We need pre-All-Star break Tyrese Halliburton back. Please, Lord, save this season. Throw all your money into that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, diving into some key stretches here. So one of the first things that really jumped out to me is 3 of the first 4 games for the Colts are at home. And then immediately after, 4 of the next 5 are on the road. So you've really got to take care of business at home, which the Colts historically have not done well early in the season. Home games really don't matter to them early in the season. Lots of bumps. Because then, again, 4 of the next 5 on the road. And it's not like a murderer's row on the road. Jacksonville, that one's tough. Tennessee, they won there last year. Houston, not great. Minnesota, they had a nice big lead there at one point a couple of years ago, if you guys remember. So, I mean, it's not terrible, those next 5, but you got to take care of business, and you got to be at least 400 in those first 4 games, 500, whatever I said.
I was like 400. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm selling them.
I never was good at math. Okay.
I think the big thing for me with that opening stretch is, like you said, we haven't seen this Colts team start hot in a long time. Even last year when things changed a little bit under Shane Steichen compared to the Frank Reich era, they still started slow. And part of that was the injuries at quarterback and the tougher schedule early last season. But this year, for as winnable as you can get really in the NFL, there's no really winnable stretches when it comes to the NFL. There's no like gimmies in the NFL. You're not playing FCS opponents to start, but getting Houston at home to start the season, I think is pretty favorable considering that you were probably going to get a divisional opponent getting that game at home and the Colts being a little extra fired up because of the way the last year ended. I think that's a positive start for them. Going to Green Bay is not ideal in week 2, but getting them after that Brazil game, I think is the most favorable you could have got that Green Bay team. And then getting 2 fairly manageable games with the Bears and the Steelers right after that, I think the Colts really got to come out strong out of that first 4 stretch. Like, I'm saying more than 400 here, Jake. I'm saying you want to go 3-1 here, at least in this stretch. Ideally, 4-0 would be amazing. But if you can go 3-1 in this opening stretch, it can really set the tone for your season. And it can carry you into that really difficult stretch in the middle of the year. Last year with this Colts team, they started off the season on a really tough stretch. A lot of the playoff teams to start the year, and then it eased up after that, and they kind of were able to coast, for a majority of the late season push until they ran into some hiccups late in the year. But this year, it's really like you have some winnable games to start. You get that really, really tough stretch in the middle of the year, and then you get that late season push that you can, again, not coast, but very winnable late season push. But I think you really got to take care of business in those first 4, come out of that 3-1 or 4-0, and then ride that into obviously that tough stretch that starts with Houston, Miami. Minnesota is not really what I'm considering in there, but Miami, Houston, Minnesota, you got Buffalo, you got the Jets in there, you got the Lions in there. That's a pretty tough stretch of games that the Colts just got to come around 500 there. But you got to set the tone early by 3-1, 4-0 out the gate. And we haven't really seen the Colts do that in a long time. So, I'm really curious to see how this team responds coming out early this upcoming season.
Yeah, so let's talk about that middle of the schedule you mentioned, because that seems like the most brutal part. So you got Miami and Houston back-to-back in weeks 7 and 8. That's 2 crazy offenses, especially passing offenses. We know from seeing both, you could take the top off there. Weeks 10 through 12 is Buffalo, the Jets, and the Lions. So that's really tough. I mean, things ease up quite a bit in the last stretch of the season, but you mentioned you have got to take care of some sort of business early in the season because it gets pretty brutal in the middle portion.
This is a big season for the Colts defense. It is a massive. I mean, you're looking at the schedule and again, early in the season, out the gate, you're getting CJ Stroud and Jordan Love, 2 really, really promising young quarterbacks. Then you get Caleb Williams in week 3, who might still be acclimating to the NFL, but still, Caleb Williams, a really good quarterback prospect who might come out the gates just ripping it. And then that tough stretch you mentioned there, you get Tua and that Miami offense that can really sling it. You get CJ Stroud again. Then you get Josh Allen, a top 2 or 3 quarterback in football. You get whatever Aaron Rodgers is at this point in his career. And then you get that Lions offense, which is been one of the best in football for a majority of, the last couple of years. So yeah, it gets easier down the stretch, with New England and Denver and Tennessee and all those teams. But like up until that Detroit game, the Colts defense is going to be make or break for this team. Like this Colts defense needs to be better than what they were last year, especially in their pass defense. A lot of good, high quality passing attacks they're going to be facing this next season. And like you said, not just that beginning stretch, but that middle stretch right there is going to be vital for this defense. So yeah, I think that's going to be kind of the murderer's row for this season for the Colts. And if they can at least go like 500 there after a strong start and a strong finish, then they'll be a playoff team. But that's kind of the route they got to go this year compared to last year where it was go 500 to start the year and then coast down the stretch.
Yeah, and you had mentioned it earlier, kind of worrisome about the pass defense with some of these offenses. They haven't really added anybody of consequence, but you've got to hope having Latu in there now with Quiddipe and Dio and Samson Ebukam on the outside, that should really help. Of course, Buckner on the inside as well. So you really got to hang your hat on getting home with the pass rush because these other teams can freaking gash you deep. So final 6 weeks I had mentioned gets a little easier. So again, final 6 weeks you're looking at the Patriots, which of course, ugly team last year. They earned Drake May in this one. Then you get your bye. You get a very late season bye, week 14, I think it is.
Yep.
And then the Broncos, who've been struggling. They just earned themselves a rookie quarterback as well. The Titans, again, the Colts swept them last year. The Giants, who have been a mess for the most part of the last decade or so. And the Jaguars, who are probably better than what they were last year. And they've made some decent moves this offseason, but I'm still never going to take the Jaguars lightly. I love getting them at home week 18 instead of in Jacksonville week 18 because you could chalk that down as an L. But no, that's at least if the Colts have some sort of really unfavorable slide or just a spot that really dug themselves a hole at some point in the season, they at least have this, I don't want to say relief because every team is capable of beating any other, but the final 6 weeks look pretty good for them.
Yeah, I think these final 6 weeks are going to show how tough this team is because on paper, it's not the hardest stretch. And no matter what happens this next year, I don't think it's going to be one of the harder stretches. Like even if Tennessee has a better year than expected and they're like a more 500-ish team, it's still going to be, kind of, again, not like an easy game, but like a winnable game regardless. And same with some of these other teams here. But I think when you're really looking at this team, at New England, that's a cold weather game. Going up to Boston, that's a tough game, and just in general for that weather. At Denver, another game that has potential to be like that, and then at New York with the Giants, these are going to be games that could be really low scoring games, and they could be kind of slop fest for the team, and it's going to show just how tough this team is. I remember, when I first started covering this team in 2018. I remember going into that second round game against the Kansas City Chiefs and everyone being like, oh, this is a tough Colts team. They run the ball well. They got Quentin Nelson, all these guys up front. So they'll be able to punch the Chiefs in the mouth, who are this like kind of finessey, like speed team. And then the Colts were the ones who got punched in the mouth. It was despite being the tougher team on paper, like we were all saying. So the Colts got to really just show their grit at the very end of the season for a lack of a better like football, cliche here. But those games, even if they're not playing like, playoff caliber teams, they're going to these cold weather games against tough defenses. I mean, New England's got a tough defense regardless. Denver's defense is never like truly awful. The Giants have had good defense the last couple of years. Like these are going to be tough cold weather games with potentially tough defenses. So the Colts got to be on their A game just to grit out some of those games late in the year. I think they can because Shane Steichen showed that he could do that and get this team to do that last year. But I think that's going to be the big part for that final stretch. Like these are winnable games on paper. It's a nice little relief at the end of the season, but they still got to bring their A game and bring their grit to win those games there.
Yeah, I feel like if the Colts are going to have to rely on the Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor combo at any point in the season, it's probably late because, again, it's just going to be physical. You're going to be worn down. It's cold. Passing is just more difficult in that scenario. And running the ball, on paper, the Colts should be one of the better teams. So that's really where they're going to need to hang their hat.
Yep. And then coming up, guys, we're going to talk about the primetime game that the Colts have and the potential for maybe some flexes late in the season. But we're going to talk about the prime times coming up in just a second. But first, buying NFL tickets can be frustrating, especially if you aren't sure if the seats are good. You can't find last-minute tickets or there are no good deals. However, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets. There's some really fun games this year, guys. You can go to either of the Houston matchups. You got home against a really fun Detroit Lions team. You get home against the Miami Dolphins, which could be a track meet, and 4 games against rookie quarterbacks. So you guys can find some great killer deals for these games on Gametime. You got last minute deals and save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and etc. I mean, anything you really want to add there, you can really go through Gametime. And you guys also get these zone deals. You can save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Jake. So we're back talking about the hundreds of primetime games that our Indianapolis Colts have. You guys know the Colts are notorious for getting home primetime games throughout the season. We're just like the Jets, baby. We get like 7 in the first 7 weeks. But no, the Colts only have one primetime game this year. They're going at New York Jets in week 11. That's going to be Sunday Night Football. But besides that, as of right now, no primetime games. And I know you guys are a little bit different than me and Jake, where we like having no primetime games because it doesn't mean we have to do a live show at like 2 a.m. But for all of you guys who love primetime games and love seeing your Colts team on the big screen in front of all your friends and family at Buffalo Wild Wings, wherever you're going, you only get the one chance to do that this year so far with the Jets game on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident week 17 at the Giants is not going to get flexed into prime time. Now, mind you, the Colts did have 2 late season games flexed into a national window last year. The Steelers was like a 4:30 Saturday game. And then week 18 with the Texans, I think, got flexed into
it got moved to Saturday.
It got moved to Saturday. Yeah. So it may not be like the 8:20 prime time, but these could get flexed to national television regardless. That Jacksonville game, week 18, already I've got that circled as one that has a high likelihood. It's going to have some sort of prominence with either of those teams, I think. But yeah, the Jets being the only one we absolutely know will be prime time. That's cool. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, hopefully he's still out there and healthy by week 12 or week 11. Should be a tough game. That defense is bonkers. So I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. I think it's a tough matchup for the Colts for their stars to shine in that element necessarily. Because again, the Jets defense is just really, really good. But yeah, basically I think the fallout of what you're seeing, very little primetime games for the Colts. Jim Irsay and the Colts beat that drum hard before 2022. They got rewarded with it, and then 2022 happened.
That's fair.
And
it's
so
totally fair.
The NFL is like, hey, never again until you're actually good again, and you've sustained it for a while. So I don't blame the NFL for taking away the Colts' rights to have primetime games once again. I think that's fair.
I feel like the NFL loves giving primetime games to teams that have like very old quarterbacks. Like, I'm not even just saying that because of Aaron Rodgers this year and the Jets getting like 12 this season, but like the one year that we got it here in Indy is when we had Matt Ryan, a potential Hall of Famer one day who was like in his last season. I feel like we got a little bit with Phillip Rivers in here too. And obviously like Tom Brady and all those guys got a ton in their final seasons. But yeah, I thought that was, I can't believe the Jets have so many prime times. Like, I know they're New York and I know they have Aaron Rodgers, but like, I think, Warren Sharp tweeted out that it's like 6 primetime games like at home in the first 11 games or 11 weeks.
I haven't looked at it yet, but I mean, that's pretty bold because like Rodgers hasn't even really played for them yet. So, but before I look, I'm going to go ahead and take a wild guess that the Cowboys have at least 5.
Yeah.
The Giants probably have a few. Like, those huge market teams are always going to have what seems like way too many primetime games early in the year, particularly. But no, I don't hate it. I won't be leaving a stadium at like 1 or 2 in the morning. You and I won't be going off air at like 2 in the morning. So I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Some other scheduling notes though that I want to leave with you guys. Our guy DSG Goodbar here put in the comment section something really cool. The Colts only have the third fewest miles to travel this season, which is obviously an advantage. Only 11,000 miles in total. And now this does help the Colts because so many teams are traveling overseas now for games, and the Colts don't have an overseas, so that's probably a good chunk of it right there. But yeah, that is an advantage there on the Colts schedule. But one disadvantage, and I think I have to pull up. Let me see if I have it here from somebody sent me a message on this one. So bear with me here a second, guys. But somebody told me, yeah, the Colts get multiple teams after bye weeks this upcoming season. They always get this at Tennessee. So after Tennessee has their bye week, the Colts get them. After Miami has their bye week, the Colts get them. And after Denver has their bye week, the Colts get them. So multiple teams coming off of their bye weeks this year. They also get Minnesota after Minnesota comes off their Thursday night football game. So the Vikings will get 10 days of rest before they play the Colts. So, when you're looking at this schedule, you get multiple advantages, multiple disadvantages, and some crazy things. And all you can really do is just play the teams in front of you, I guess. This is where analyzing the schedule comes into kind of disarray here, where it's like, there's so many good things coming your way, but also so many bad things coming your way. So we'll see what happens here.
Let me put you on the spot real quick. Which game are you most looking forward to? Because I'm tossing over some options here. I'll give you mine first so you can think about it, but it's not Houston week 1 because I'm going to feel really pessimistic about it for a while. I think the one I'm looking forward to most is week 5 at Jacksonville, because especially the last year or so, I've really talked myself into the fact that I think they're going to finally do it. I do think this is the year they go into Jacksonville and get the win. Like, I think Jacksonville is a fine team. They somehow play superhuman when it's against the Colts at home, but like there's so much newness for the Colts than when that losing streak started. Like, I have way more confidence in Shane Steichen and a healthy Anthony Richardson, and the Colts should have a really nice defensive line. Their linebackers are physical. It's a game where I don't think the Colts youth in the secondary is going to be a huge problem, because Trevor Lawrence isn't necessarily a big push it down the field type of quarterback. So I feel good about the Jacksonville game this year.
I wish I could share that optimism.
Right. You may switch that up with me about Houston. I don't know, but I don't feel great about that.
Yeah, I think those first 2 games are going to be, obviously, the Houston game, we have months now to sit on it and get excited about it. So, I'm going to be sitting here for a long time breaking down Houston film from last year, because that's what we can look at, because that's who we're playing in week 1. And that's what we have to go off of when it comes to that Houston team. So obviously the week 1 game against Houston, but I'm always interested in looking at measuring stick games, where this team is going to be, where they could be, can they compete with the elites of the NFL? And we've seen it in times, like even in their bad seasons, beating the Kansas City Chiefs with Matt Ryan as their quarterback. Like, we've seen them somehow pull off these upsets. So I'm looking at that Detroit game in week 12, especially if the Colts are hovering around 500 or maybe a little bit above or a little bit below at that point. That week 12 home game against Detroit, one of the NFL's elite teams right now, or close to elite teams. They were half away from being in the Super Bowl last year. They have a lot of dudes coming back. They added another good draft class. Detroit is a really good, well-coached football team. And I'm curious to see how this Colts team can stack up against a team like that. A really built, well team, like just all around really solid football team. Do the Colts compete with a team like Detroit by week 12 of next season? Because if they're not even competitive in that game, then we got to restart some expectations for where this team is going. But if they can come out there and punch a team in Detroit in the mouth like that, and maybe win that game at home, then we're feeling pretty good about where this thing is going with Steichen and Richardson. So outside of week 1, obviously week 1 is the most anticipated game. I think that week 12 game against Detroit at home is going to be a big one for this Colts team.
Yeah, I especially am interested in that one being right after the Jets game. Because it's like, whether the Colts lose or win that Jets game, if they win against the Jets and win or are highly competitive against the Lions, like, okay, they might be for real. But if they lose against the Jets and come back and beat the Lions, depending on how it looks in that Jets game, it's one of those things where it doesn't look as bad and you can still have confidence in where they're going long term.
Yeah. That's all we have for today, guys. So I know we didn't do a whole game-by-game prediction, but don't worry. There's still plenty of offseason left. We could still do that here in the next couple of days. So make sure you're tuning into Locked On Colts every single day. If you guys don't already, follow us on Twitter at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews. And before we get out of here, make sure you drop your record prediction in the comments section. Most accurate one gets a hug or something from Jake, because Jake's nearby you guys. So Jake,
big hugger.
You guys a hug.
I'm a big hugger.
Big hugger. Big hugger there. But we will see you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.